Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Los Banos Talk. My name is Justin Collins. On tonight's episode, I'm going to be interviewing Paul Llanez, and you might remember him as a candidate that was running for mayor back in 2020. Well, he's back again to talk on the show about the negotiations with the city and the Police Officers Association. And so we're going to get into that in just a moment, right after a brief message from our sponsor. And we're back. Thanks for watching. So once again, folks, I'm here and I have Paul Llanez with me, who is the president of the local Police Officer Association for Los Banos. And without further ado, you can introduce yourself.
Hey, Justin. It's good to talk to you again. Yes. So I'm Paul Llanez. I'm currently the president of the Los Banos POA. We're the bargaining unit in the Police Officer Association. So I represent all of the sworn police officers for the city of Los Banos.
Great. And so recently I've seen a post that basically says the Police Officer Association and the city are at an impasse over the negotiation over the salary. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, so we, at the terms of the contract, when the city and the POA get together and negotiate contracts, they're for a set amount of years or months or hopefully never weeks. But in this case, it was, the end of our term for a 10-month contract. And so we began to renegotiate again. After months of attempting to get a deal done, we were unable to. Both sides were unable to get a deal done.
So why couldn't a deal be reached? Why was there no room for compromise?
Yeah, and I can't speak for the city. Obviously, I can only speak for our end. And this is my 6th term as Police Officer Association president. So this is not my first negotiations with the city. I've done this several times. And for the most part, the rules of the city and the rules of the association, from our standpoint, since the 6 years I've been doing this, it hasn't changed. Ours is retention. We want to keep good police officers here. We want people to, raise families here and develop relationships with the city and with the people, the community that, lives here every day. And that's just not happening. And it hasn't been happening. And this go around, our association decided that we're going to stand up and try to put a stop to that.
So when we talk about retention, I would think one of the things that would help us retain people is basically reasonable salary, reasonable compensation. What was the city proposing? Was that seemed as reasonable? What were you guys kind of wanting?
Yeah, so yeah, let's start from the beginning. We did a contract 10 months ago. We met with the city, negotiated with them. And they basically told us, hey, in 10 months, things are going to look a little different. So right now, just accept what we're going to give you. And then let's revisit in 10 months and work out a stronger deal. Well, that stronger deal equated to a best offer of 2%, a 2-year, 2% each year in salary raise, which, in most people's minds, that's called the cost of living increase. So not really a raise by any means. And that was the offer given to the city.
Actually, 2% isn't even keeping up with the current inflation rate.
Correct.
So, so our police department is one of the lowest paid in the state. And I know that there's other departments around us like Fireball and Dos Palace that pay slightly less, but they're also significantly smaller cities. How did they determine the city? How did the city determine that the salary that they were proposing was considered fair?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because that's an answer I'd like to get, and I'm not getting a straight answer on that either. The city itself put together a survey of cities, did a salary and benefits comparison package, presented that information, and realized, oh, the Los Banos POA is way behind the market. So instead of saying, hey, let's maybe work out something together, let's figure out a solution, meet common ground. Instead, the city decided, well, we have some Bay Area cities that were in this survey that we created that now we should remove. And we should remove them and put in, places like Oakdale and some smaller cities and localized cities that really don't match to what Los Banos has got going on. And to give you an idea of what I'm talking about is, we exceeded 40,000 people. We're the second largest city in the county. We had more homicides last year than Merced and Atwater combined. So we are a unique city in that aspect. And so we have obviously some crime plaguing our city, and we need to address that. So with that being said, the new survey that the city put out in comparison was of cities of their choice, of course. And when we got to that point, the information didn't change much. We were still behind the market, and we are still currently behind the market. So where the 2% each year came from, I'll be honest, I have no idea.
Okay, so there's a couple things about this that have kind of thrown me off. I mean, so we talk about retention, we talk about hiring new officers, but lately I've seen a lot of new officers that are significantly even younger than me, and I'm a pretty young guy. I mean, at this point, what's kind of our ratio from seasoned officers to younger officers? And lately, how many seasoned officers have we lost?
So let's talk about that. So I've been in law enforcement going on 20 years this year, and not all of that is full time, of course. But what I've learned doing this job and with any job, if you take your kids to the doctor, right? Do you want the doctor that just got out of med school? Do you want somebody that's got 20 years on the job? Right? If your roof leaks and you call for somebody to come fix it, do you want somebody who's yours is the very first roof, right? Or do you want somebody seasoned to do it? Currently, the way it stands, we have some very young, eager officers that want to work and they want to learn, and I applaud them for that. They're a great group of people. But between 18 and 20 of them have less than 18 months on the job. That's 18 months in law enforcement.
About what percentage of our police force is that? That's new.
Well, I believe we only have 31 Police Officer Association members.
So that would be about half.
About 2/3. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So with that being said too, I mean, I feel like the negotiations have to be kind of weird because the city manager right now, or acting city manager, is Gary Breezy, who is also formerly the police chief and will be the police chief again. So how is that? How can you separate yourself from that? How does that make sense, and how's that worked out?
Well, and that's another issue that we've brought to the city, and that's something that the city and we can't meet common ground on. And what that involves is actually the grievance process itself. So currently, the city policy on that is if there's a grievance process, it goes to the city manager, which in this case is also your police chief, and that person would have the final say in the matter. So in essence, the person you could be complaining about is also the person that's going to handle the matter, which does not seem fair, in my opinion.
Right. That's kind of like when you go to a store and you're like, I'd like to speak to the manager, and then they're like, wait 1 second. Hi, I'm the manager,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, nothing against Chief Breezy and his role as acting city manager. It's just a policy that's set. So it's not that who's the person's in there, but it's just a policy that the city has kind of created themselves on this.
So, I mean, why do you think maybe that the city is so reluctant to offer a pay increase, considering the fact that we're about to get COVID relief money? That's significant. We've had surpluses year after year. We have a really high crime rate. We've talked about retention, and overwhelmingly, I would say our local population is pro law enforcement and has been saying they should be paid more, especially when we look at how much staff is paid, which is way above what it takes to live here. And then police officers don't even make enough to really buy a house here if they're new. So, I mean, what do you think the logic is there?
And I'm gonna say this line, and I hate saying it, but it's the way we've always done things. It's the way the city's always done things, and I hear that over and over. And I don't believe in it, and I think it needs to change. And that's why this contract go around. Our association has decided to stand up for itself and stand up for its own community. We're going to need community backing on this. This is the only way that I'm going to be able to keep good police officers here. We just lost another senior detective. He was a canine handler, Todd Carter. He just recently left to another agency. We've recently learned in the last 48 hours that the Hollister Police Officer Association reached a tentative agreement of a 14% raise with 7.5% in the first year. So from a recruiting standpoint, we may lose people to Hollister. I hope we don't, but we may.
So when I was interviewing candidates that were running for city council recently, virtually all of them said that they were pro law enforcement and would be for increasing the salary. So I guess my question, which is rather blunt, and I don't know if you know, who's lying? Because I interviewed 3 people, and that's a majority, and they said they would, and it's not happening. So what gives?
And I haven't had any of those conversations with any members of city council. My dealings have been, directly with the city staff and their negotiations team and their attorney. And that's the conversations we've been having. And this is typically how it goes, in negotiations. So we have us, we're represented by legal counsel in the city as well. So our conversation is typically not met at the city council level or at the elected official level. And I really wish it was, because I think, besides attorneys, we could probably get something done. I'm an employer. I have employees, and, I focus on employee life cycles and how long someone's going to work for me and do work for me, right? And I want them to be a productive, happy employee. So I would never have the mindset of, well, I'm just going to have a constant training ground of these people and they're going to leave and go to another job, because that would cost me in the end, right? And so I really wish the city would kind of focus that on the same way of what's going on here.
So, what would you say to the arguments that have been against giving really the police officers a raise? And the two that I hear the most are, one, the police officers or police department, if you will, is getting a new building. And what would you say to the other argument that all other organizations have reached a deal with the city?
Okay, so two-part question. We're getting our police department for the first time, I believe, in 70 years, 60 years, something like that. So I wouldn't say it's something that the city constantly reinvests in its employees. Also, with that being said, and I don't know how many different places you've worked in your life. I've worked at quite a few. I haven't really cared much about the building I work in, rather than the money I make and how I provide for my family. I think how people can go home and buy groceries and put gas in their car far exceeds how nice of a shiny new building you have that you work in. Again, that's my personal opinion. It might not be a popular one, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there, because I mean, everywhere I've worked, whether it's bad, whether it's good looking, at the end of the day, as long as I'm safe, whatever. And the thing is I'm not going to go to my wife and say, look, I can't afford to pay the mortgage, but hey, my office is lush. I mean, it's nice. I mean, said no one ever. At the end of the day, the thing I care the most about is my salary.
Absolutely. Salary and benefits.
And so the second question was, what would you say to the argument that every other organization that was negotiating has reached an agreement?
I can't speak for the other organizations or what the mindset was going in, or what deals were made. I can only speak for the fact that our police department has had staffing issues for a very long time. I'm pretty confident saying we have the highest turnover rate of any department within the city itself, which is kind of odd because we also have the highest budget. So you would think we wouldn't have this issue. But yeah, I can't speak for the other bargaining units. We're just here to keep police officers in Los Banos.
So we keep talking about creative ways and ways to try to deal with the local crime problem, right? And then at the same time, we have a lot of new officers. And there was something I was thinking, because as you know, I have experience as well, as a former officer myself. And one of the things I was thinking is this: depending upon the officer, how new they are, and how well they write up their report is a large determining factor of the possibility of that person actually receiving jail time or not. Some people are a little bit more clever than others and can apply more of the penal code, and not to mention they just write a better report. And then some people, when they're new, they write a crappy report, and then the DA is like, "Yeah, I'm not doing anything with this."
Well, and another thing to kind of touch on that as well is, look at other agencies that have specialized units, right? Look at Merced Police Department. Look at the Sheriff's Department. They have specialized units of senior officers who have proven themselves, who now are being proactive out there, who are doing proactive policing things. Where we, on the other hand, I just talked to a sergeant the other day. A sergeant is supervising the road while training a trainee. So obviously staffing comes into play, and people are having to wear multiple hats. So we don't have that opportunity to be as proactive as we should be in our city.
Right. I mean, I've definitely seen that myself. So, I mean, with this impasse, I mean, is it just going to eventually get to a point where you guys just kind of have to take it, or is there any opportunity to rectify this, or how does that really go?
Yeah. So, in the end, the city's going to do what it wants to do. And that's just the truth, and no matter what I say or anybody else says, it's going to be the community and the voice of the community that is going to reach an agreement on this, to be honest. And so that's what our association is looking for. We're looking for the community to share their voice and say, hey, listen, we want good police officers to stay here. We don't want it to be a constant training ground of turning over and hiring people and then they go off to other places. We want people to stay here and we want to retain them. And the community is going to have to be that voice to our council and to our city staff to make that happen.
Right. And so, I mean, really, probably one of the most important questions and something I've been wanting to ask is, I mean, who really, at the end of the day, where does the buck stop? Who's really at fault here for this and making these decisions? Is it mayor? Is it city council? Is it city manager? Is this all staff? Or at the end of the day, could the city council direct staff to approve or negotiate?
We work again directly with the attorneys. The attorneys represent the city and the human resources director. That is who our conversations take place with in our communications. Where it goes from there, I'll be honest, I don't know. I don't know how that level of communication. I don't know if everything we say gets sent up the chain or not. But yeah, it ultimately ends with the city council. The city council is going to make the decision on what to do with the money. How to reinvest it, if they're going to choose to reinvest it in our staff or not. And so it ultimately ends with the city council.
So for those who don't know, our city attorney is Bill Vaughn.
Well, they're actually working with, they have a group that they deal with, Leibort, Cassidy, and Whitmore. That's their labor attorney.
So, I mean, okay, this is something that actually kind of sounds funny to me. So the city's spending money on hiring an attorney outside of our city in order to avoid paying less, instead of using that money to just pay more.
I would be curious to know what the legal bills is for our association. We pay for our attorney. Pete Hoffman represents us, and he's amazing, but he is not cheap. And our union dues go to pay for that as well. So I know the city's paying a pretty penny on their end.
It kind of makes me wonder how they sleep at night. I mean, if that's your job to be an attorney and you go to the city and go, look, we'll actually save you money, even though we're expensive, we're going to make their salary so low that it's actually going to cost less than hiring us. I mean, I don't really know how you sleep at night or how you become that attorney. I kind of feel like you have to be a real jerk to that be your job, but fair enough.
And one of the other aspects is not just salary, and it's not just, the lack of arbitration. Another thing was the COVID funds. We're seeing a lot of departments up and down the state, even in the nation, are receiving COVID funds. Our police officers never stopped working. They were essential workers for obvious reasons, and they never stopped working during the entire pandemic. And the city reached out and said, hey, we want to offer you not a salary increase, of course, but a one-time, cash payment of some of this COVID money. And at the end of the day, we looked at the offer made from the city, and it was less than 2%. Less than 2% of the money they were going to receive. So I had a couple of questions. What are you spending the other 98% on? And why are our public safety people worth 2% of the 7.7 million that the city is receiving in COVID money?
Now, I can't tell you exactly what the city will spend the COVID money on, but if I was to guess, it's either going to be sunk into the Pioneer Improvement Plan, or that money is basically going to go in the reserve in order to be a political talking point of, hey, look how big our reserve is.
And that may be the case. I don't know, but I do know it's limited spending. They have it for 3 years, and so I know there's certain rules with how they spend it as well. So I hope the right things are done in the end.
So I think at this point, I mean, I would say that, yeah, it doesn't sound like the city is very, supportive, frankly, of law enforcement, and doesn't really feel as though you guys, considering how big your call load is and how bad crime has been lately, deserve fair compensation. I mean, that's how I interpret it, and I think a lot of people would agree.
Yeah, and again, I'm not on here to point fingers or make blame at anyone. This is just a communication gap that has to be reached, and it's got to start with the citizens. Our community needs to know, the fights that the police officers have, not just on the streets, but with the people that sign their paychecks as well. And so we need to get a resolution to this, and it's going to start with our community having a voice.
Fair enough. I can understand your point. I understand you're not here to point fingers, but it's my job to point fingers and let people know who they need to send angry emails to, ultimately, at the end of the day. So it sounds like HR staff, city attorney, and then really, I mean, if anything, talk to your city councilman. Be like, hey, you campaigned and said you would support law enforcement and you think they should get paid more. I have on video Kenneth Lambert saying that. I have on video Tom Faria saying that. So it begs the question, what gives? Because you made a campaign promise. So what gives?
And we are a closed session item in their next board meeting. So this is the opportunity for the community to send those emails in and share how they feel, give their opinion, and help support the POA.
Very well. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate having you as a guest.
Thanks for having me, Justin. I appreciate it.
Once again, if you haven't already, please like, follow, subscribe to Los Banos Talk. We have Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and of course, LosBanosTalk.com. You can become a supporter of Los Banos Talk for just $4.99 a month and gain access to all the videos first and ad-free. Once again, my name is Justin Collins, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.